Guys, I suppose we'll, since some of you haven't been on the stage, you want to just give a quick introduction to yourselves. To start with yourself, Simon, please.
Hello, everybody. My name's Simon. I was one of the co-founders of Bridge to Bitcoin with Chris and James. Chris was here a couple of years ago. If you were at the conference then, you'd have seen his talk about merchant adoption. So I started Bridge to Bitcoin with James and Chris in about April 2022, and we've onboarded a lot of businesses, primarily in the UK. We don't keep super numbers, but we think it's about 250 that we've onboarded. I also founded Bitcoin Events UK, which is a website which lists all of the meetups in the UK. You can, and Ireland as well. We cover the whole of Ireland. There's about 60 meetups now between Ireland and the UK, and you can go to that website and find all the details of how to contact your local meetup. So that's, and we kind of, I'll talk about that in a while, but we kind of use between Bridge to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Events UK, they're kind of the two sides of the same coin, where we use the meetups in a way to help onboard merchants. So I'll talk about that more in a little while.
Happy days.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike. I am the Customer VP at a Bitcoin-first payments company called MUSQET. We started off life about 18 months ago, building out the world's first fully integrated self-custodial payments gateway and payments terminal. So we provide merchants, restaurants, shops, pubs, bars, etc., with the ability to get a taste of Bitcoin, access the $2 trillion Bitcoin network in a way that's super familiar to them. So you can pay for drinks, products, whatever it is you're buying at the point of sale using debit card, credit card, Visa, Amex, MasterCard, and Bitcoin on one machine that a 5-year-old could use with 5 seconds of training.
Awesome. John, it's not your first conference, but...
Not my first conference. Good to be back. Much bigger than last year, which is great to see. It's awesome. My name is John Magill, founder and CEO of Zaprite. We're a Bitcoin payments gateway, non-custodial Bitcoin payments gateway. We have a suite of tools for merchants to accept Bitcoin. So if you're running a business of any kind, whether you're a freelancer, all the way up to a small or large business with employees, and if you're taking payments from people at all, we provide invoicing, billing, payment links, virtual point-of-sale terminals, event ticketing, a full API. Essentially, we're a hosted checkout company. And as I said, we're non-custodial, so you come to us with your existing wallet or your credit card provider, Lightning Node, whatever it might be, Lightning Wallet. Plug them all in, configure a checkout, and then we actually run the server, we run the checkout, we do all the transaction stamping in the database, the notifications, emails, everything, price stuff. So we abstract away a lot of the complexities of trying to run systems to get paid in Bitcoin. But yeah, again, it started as a product that I needed myself working as a freelancer, an invoicing platform, and it's kind of just grown out from that. So yeah, chat about that soon. But
yeah, my name is Alan Jackson. I'm a Bitcoin pleb, and in my day job, I'm a corporate pilot. So I'm flying around the world in my travels. I'm always in the hotel vans. I talk to everybody about Bitcoin. I met up with a co-pilot one day and said, "Oh, I hear you're the Bitcoin pilot." So I had a little reputation in my company about talk to co-pilots about Bitcoin and everywhere I go. I'm also an avid motorcyclist, and so I built the Freedom Tour last November in El Salvador. We flew to El Salvador, rented motorcycles, stayed in hotels, ate restaurants, all in Bitcoin. You had to pay to Bitcoin to join my tour. So I love the freedom money Bitcoin. I love freedom on 2 wheels, motorcycles. I just love talking about Bitcoin with people.
Awesome. So the panel discussion is increasing local Bitcoin adoption, sort of my bread and butter. I find most Bitcoiners, they struggle to orange pill even their friends. And like, I think the goal is to try and like there's two ways Bitcoin's been adopted. It's been adopted by the bigs, and it was sort of made for the smalls. And it's the smalls' journey. It's the smalls' responsibility, perhaps, to try and help educate the plebs, and help them understand why they should own Bitcoin, why they should use Bitcoin. How do you think we're going about this wrong, or how do you guys help to increase local Bitcoin adoption? Maybe Simon, if you want to start us off. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the strategy, I suppose, that we use with Bridge to Bitcoin, we don't try and orange pill the business owners necessarily. We pitch it as it's extra business for them. So in the same way as if you were a hotel owner and you put a Tesla charger in your car park, you're going to get the Tesla drivers are going to come and use your hotel rather than the hotel down the road. So if you accept Bitcoin as payment, you're tapping into the Bitcoin community, and all the Bitcoiners will come to you. And what we found is Bridge to Bitcoin is really kind of a marketing company. We set them up. We do the technical side of it, which is pretty straightforward and simple. We can do it on a Zoom call these days and get them up and running. And then our job really is to market those businesses out to the Bitcoin community, to put them on BTC maps and tweet it out. And this is where the side of things with Bitcoin Events UK, we've got direct connections to all of the local Bitcoin communities, all the meetups, and say a restaurant in Brighton decides that they'd like to accept Bitcoin, we can directly talk to the guy that runs the Brighton meetup, and he can then convey to his members. He might have 30 people that comes to his meetup, and he'll tell all those, okay, we've got a new restaurant, let's go and have our next meetup in the restaurant. And it brings some new business, and it ensures that they are then going to get some Bitcoin coming into their business. Well, in the past, in probably early days of Bitcoin, people would just put like a Bitcoin sticker accepted here in their window, and nobody would know that they accepted Bitcoin. Just some random person walking past is probably not going to accept Bitcoin. But if you get yourself out there into the wider community, get the word out, Bitcoiners will travel 2 hours to go and buy a coffee somewhere, so that's kind of the way we pitch it to business owners through the process of them then having Bitcoiners coming into their business, and they're realizing how happy these people are, and they're a little bit different from your regular customers. They start to sort of through osmosis, they start to understand a little bit about Bitcoin. They'll start asking questions. Bitcoiners will have meetups there, and they'll hear some of the conversations, and we've found that been quite successful. That they start to understand Bitcoin themselves just through being surrounded by Bitcoiners. So it's kind of yeah.
Very good. And it sort of sounds a lot like we're keeping the Bitcoin in our circular economy, but the journey for me is to bring more into it. And I guess in what you're saying, the business owners end up getting orange pilled.
They do, yeah. We've had lots of cases actually where they've really to start. There was 3 pubs. One guy that owned 3 pubs, and he at this first business, he didn't want to keep the Bitcoin. He wanted to flip it straight to pounds. We had some meetups there through him being, around the Bitcoiners, and this pub was full of Bitcoiners. He was hearing the conversations. When he then set up at his second pub, he said, actually, I'm going to keep the Bitcoin now, because he'd learned from, just like today, there's people here today that didn't really understand at the start of the day what Bitcoin is. By the end of the day, you understand what Bitcoin is because you're hearing all these conversations. So it was quite a quick process for him to then say, okay, in the second pub, we'll keep it. So it was quite successful in that way. And there's lots of other examples.
That's awesome. Thanks, Simon. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So just on the question of how do we orange pill, or how do I orange pill plebs and businesses, something I've found really useful is helping people to see the Bitcoin network. As we all know, Bitcoin is a network, a monetary network. It exists on computers and in private keys and whatnot, around the world. But there have been some fantastic developments in the tool, visualization world that allow people to get an understanding of what's actually going on with the Bitcoin network at any point in time. My favorite is probably mempool.space. And I've used it really successfully with my kids friends. So, you can talk them through how Bitcoin is actually operating on a real-time basis and make this thing real for them. And I've found that to be tremendously helpful. Many, many light bulbs I've seen, appearing above people's heads and kids' heads as they suddenly start to get a grip that this Bitcoin thing is a fair and open competition that's happening every 10 minutes to get, coins released into the network in a way that's, written in stone, can't be changed by anybody arbitrarily. That's been tremendously helpful, actually. A second way is, if I were to say to you guys, who here is prepared to buy 100 quid's worth of Bitcoin on the spot right now? Could I see a quick show of hands? Okay, that's fair. So for those watching at home, that's a bit more than half. Who here would like me to give them 100 quid's worth of Bitcoin right now? Can you give me a show of hands? Okay, a few more. So what I've found is getting people to part with their cash to buy Bitcoin is a scary idea if they don't understand it. So the first part is helping them to understand it and get a grip of it, mentally, build a mental framework for it. The second is to give them some. I've done this not in lots of cases just through, I'm going to give somebody it as a gift. But if I'm splitting a bill, if I'm out for dinner with friends, there's been a few friends that I've managed to orange pill simply by saying, can I pay you in Bitcoin for my part of the bill? And they always say yes. And that's led them down, the rabbit hole journey. So that's been really effective. And a third area is with merchants, because Bitcoin's money. Bitcoin is popularized now as, a store of value and a digital gold. No, Bitcoin's money. We celebrated 22nd of March on Thursday when Laszlo Hanyek famously exchanged 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 Papa John's pizzas. In that act, he moved Bitcoin from a collectible to a medium of exchange. That came before the store of value. The very act of turning it into a medium of exchange and giving Bitcoin a market price delivered the value next. Right? Suddenly we have a marker in the sand for what kind of value this thing is enabling. And it migrated from being a collectible. So Bitcoin's money, it is a medium of exchange, and for it to survive, it needs to grow as a medium of exchange. So Princey, my good friend, and I were chatting yesterday, and one of his ways of doing it is to go into every shop and say, can I pay with Bitcoin? Now we've created a solution to give merchants the ability to do that in a really easy way. And it doesn't have to be scary either. So if the merchant thinks, well, am I going to get a load of Bitcoiners coming to my door and I'm going to have this Bitcoin thing and how do I pay my staff? That's maybe quite scary. So what we've created with MUSQET is a way of allowing merchants to tap into it, and we give them a choice of either immediately converting that into GBP or euros or whatever their local currency is and having that settle in their bank account the next day natively as nation state money, as fiat, or they have the ability to take the Bitcoin payment via their own full node that we set up with them, that they control the keys for, and it settles into their cold storage. We find that merchants like to start with the first version and then migrate to the second when they realize how much that Bitcoin could have grown in value.
Happy days. John, do you want to speak a little bit about what you guys are at?
Yeah, just touching a little bit on the store of value, medium of exchange stuff. Bitcoin's value is only stored between 2 mediums of exchange, so it has to be medium of exchange. To talk a little bit about what we're doing, it kind of ties in a little bit, because for us, we don't necessarily do a lot of orange pilling, insofar as the merchants are coming to us already understanding Bitcoin as a store of value. They come to it first as a store of value. Then they start to realize the medium of exchange aspect, but they understand it first from the point of view of, this is a really powerful asset for me to have on my balance sheet in the treasury for my business. And I want to get it on my balance sheet for my business, so what's the best way to do that? And the most efficient way to do that, and the best way to do that, is to get it directly from your customers, is open up those channels directly to each customer and get that Bitcoin straight in, rather than having to just accept fiat all the time and then go to an exchange and be reliant on exchanges to purchase your Bitcoin. So for us, it's all about building the tools that actually streamline that process of allowing merchants to take Bitcoin onto their balance sheet in the most seamless, effortless way. They don't have to run servers. They don't have to do any of that stuff. We basically abstract it all away. For anybody who might be familiar with some of the existing tools, you might have BTC Pay Server, amazing product on one end of the scale that you have to run your own server and be technical to get it up and running, manage lightning channels, all that stuff. The other end of the scale, you might have somebody like, say, OpenNode, that is a fully custodial KYC exchange that, again, abstracts away everything, but you're there holding your Bitcoin, you're doing KYC. Zaprite sits in that sweet spot in the middle where we run the servers for you. We provide you all of the merchant tools, so the hosted checkouts, invoicing, billing, payment links, point of sale, APIs, to give you those hosted checkouts. But we do it in a way that abstracts away all of the technical aspects. So you literally just come to us with an existing wallet, an existing Lightning wallet or a Bitcoin wallet, and credit card provider. You plug it into Zaprite, and then we just give you all these tools. So within 2 minutes, you're accepting Bitcoin, but you're doing it in a self-custodial manner if you choose. So for us, a lot of the customers that sign up for Zaprite they're already orange pilled. They understand Bitcoin and they want to get that onto their balance sheet. So really for us, it's a slightly different process in that we're dealing with people who already understand Bitcoin and they just want the tools and the best way to actually get it onto their balance sheet. It's a little bit of a different process. We also do, we do some orange pilling on the other side, because there are companies that we're trying to integrate with that don't necessarily understand the power of Bitcoin. So we do trying to sell them it on that side as well. And then we're also super conscious of the other side of the checkout, which is the consumer side, the payer side. And so there's a little bit of orange pilling on that side too, because it's a harder process for people to part with their Bitcoin to pay. But ultimately, it has to start with the merchants, because even if you have Bitcoiners who are super passionate about paying, they can't pay unless they have a merchant who's willing to accept it. So it starts with the merchant, and that's really what our tools are geared for.
Awesome. Alan, I'm interested in like the day-to-day conversations, because you're the Bitcoin pilot. And, with that status comes a sense of authority and possibly more trust people have with you. Like, how have you been getting on teaching Bitcoin to people? Is it...
I think storytelling and how Bitcoin has changed my life and how I use Bitcoin gives people pause to think about it. If I'm spending money anywhere, I'm offering Bitcoin first. And many times they say, well, I can't. And I say, well, I feel obligated to humanity to offer the better money first. And but I buy my eggs in Bitcoin. I have a friend who sells eggs, so I send him some Bitcoin. The next morning, my mailbox is 2 dozen fresh eggs. I just find people open to the idea. So about a third of my Uber drivers now will take a Bitcoin tip. If I'm in a car with a little old lady, I tell this little lady, you know what? I buy Bitcoin for my kids and my grandkids for their future. I've heard them say, oh yeah, the grandkids. And she took a tip in Bitcoin. It was the grandkids that really clicked in her mind as something to leave for her grandkids. But yeah, and I think people, a couple of years ago, many folks would not maybe have heard about Bitcoin. Now everybody has heard about Bitcoin. And so I like to develop a story that I can share, depending upon where they're at in life, possibly, of how Bitcoin has improved my life, affected my life. From my travels, giving Bitcoin away in Thailand to, I was in Nigeria last year. I gave about 30 people Bitcoin in Nigeria. So wherever I am going, I see people. Everybody could use a little Bitcoin. And I'm very happy to say, you know what? I love showing people the beauty of how Bitcoin works. Do you have a smartphone? Yes. Pull it out. Let me show you the beauty of giving you a small sample of Bitcoin. You'll be amazed at the technology. And now that you have some, go and learn. The more you learn about Bitcoin, the more you'll appreciate it, the more you'll want some. But I offer many people samples. I probably give about 10, 12 people each week a sample of Bitcoin and encourage them to learn.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's something that I do as well. I think when you're trying to orange bill someone, it's basically sales, and different things work on different people. So you have to understand who you're talking to and how you position it or how you pitch it. Showing people Bitcoin working has been super easy. So it's like, download this wallet. Okay, boom. There, I just sent you 1,000 sats, 10,000 sats. I could have sent you €1,000,000. It's pretty easy, wasn't it? And they're like, right, yeah, wow, and that's it. I was like, yeah, that's it. That's as quick and easy as it was. We have a running joke with one of the lads in the pub, like, and I sent him €1, but now he has a pint worth. He has a fiver, like. And whenever we went to the pub, he's like, oh, Dinny, I can't get me pint now. We're down to 4.50 or whatever. But I find things like that really good. Sometimes I think sort of telling people what they want to hear or selling people what they think they want to hear and then teaching them what they need to hear. That was a strategy in Bitcoin with Dinny for a while. You know, and that worked really, really effectively. So sometimes it's, yeah, we like, even say on my website we had crypto, and people are like, you can't say crypto. It's like, but majority of the no-coiners, they think Bitcoin and crypto are the same. Fair enough, you'll have a Bitcoiner who'll be angry at you, but it facilitated us to orange pill thousands of people over the last 4 years. So it doesn't really matter, you know, to keep one person happy or not upset them or stand on their toes. And I think that's been pretty valuable of not being too toxic and allowing people to get, you know, to not know everything, because we didn't know everything, and I made a lot of mistakes along the journey. And to be okay with that and be welcoming, because it's difficult to sell something if you're an asshole to someone, I find sometimes, and Bitcoiners ultimately are trying to sell Bitcoin, but sometimes I think they go about it the wrong way. Like, you know, your average Bitcoiner, they struggle to orange pill their best friend. You know, they should be able to orange pill thousands of people or hundreds of people or their whole bubble, like, but I just think sometimes we don't sell it correctly. I want to talk a little bit about the digital euro, because it was mentioned that the digital euro is coming out. And again, to people who know no difference, it's just, well, why would I buy Bitcoin when I can buy the digital euro now? Surely your Bitcoin thing, Dinny, is going to go away. How do you guys see this impacting, if any of you want to pick that up?
They're two very different things. It's a great point, though, because a lot of people conflate the idea that all digital money is effectively synonymous. So you have to dig into the properties of each version of digital money and why Bitcoin is extremely different. You know, it sits at the completely opposite end of the spectrum when comparing it to central bank digital currencies. Bitcoin is permissionless. It can't be inflated arbitrarily, as I said earlier. It's, you know, 21 million hard cap, as many people have already made the point of today. And there's no conditions placed around what you're able to buy and sell for Bitcoin. If you have a willing buyer or a willing seller, you can have a exchange happening there with Bitcoin for your products or services. Nobody can interfere with that. Central bank digital currencies are the opposite. They are fully permissioned. They are limitlessly printable. They have destruction and debasement of your purchasing power built into them by design. We call it, or they call it, an inflation target. That's just a cute name for we're going to steal your time and your money, but at a small enough rate that hopefully you won't notice and light up the torches and bring out the pitchforks. Conditions can be placed around central bank digital currencies. And I think the way in which this will be introduced will be slowly. So it will appear to be a good thing in the first instance. CBDCs will not be rolled out with huge restrictions placed around them on when you can spend them or by what time you're able to spend them, you know, limited in terms of maybe, you know, a month ahead, or where you can spend them or what you can buy. It will probably come out through an airdrop. You know, the COVID era that we just came through, in the US, they had stimmy checks, as they called them, where everybody was given, I think it was about $1,700, something like that. If you'd used that money to buy Bitcoin, you would have 10x'd it by now, by the way. But I would imagine a CBDC will be released maybe in that way to the needy at the next financial crisis. And that will be great. People will see it as free money. You know, I can go out and spend this and stimulate the economy. And then over time, I think we'll see the restrictions coming in softly as it becomes normalized and more obsolete, more prevalent. And before we know it, you'll have a fully permissioned money and a fully permissioned society. And I guess it's going to make for interesting times when we see that fully permissioned society emerging and clashing with a permissionless money that can't be messed with.
Yeah, I think a big distinction on that as well is really honing in on the difference between money and currency. You really have to ask the question is what is money in the first place? And most people, when you ask that question, they just tell you, oh, it's the euros in my bank account or in my pocket. That's not money, that's just currency. Money is what you get in exchange for your time, your time and energy that you put into getting paid. You should be getting something that can store that time and energy into the future so you can go and buy that time back in the future, which is retirement, right? You want to take that money and buy back time in the future. But if that money is being debased at a constant rate in 30, 40 years' time when you go to retire, you simply can't, because your money can't buy back enough time. So trying to get people to understand that question of what exactly is money, you can then start to understand, well, okay, the digital euro is just another form of their debasement currency. That's all it is. Like we need to move on to something that is fundamentally a proper money. And I think having that distinction is going to be crucially important, because I think, as you said, like CBDCs will come out, like you said, they won't have all these restrictions at the start, right out of the gate, and in fact it might be the opposite. They may even have all of these like sweeteners for you to switch over, like maybe we'll put an extra few CBDC euros in there if you switch your account today, just like they were trying to give people like burgers and fries if they got a COVID jab. There's all these things that they'll incentivize you to do to make it look like it's a good thing to do. But ultimately, you need to ask that question, is try and get the person to think of like, well, what is money? What is it I'm exchanging my time for? I don't want to live my life in constant debasement by having my productive value taken by a target of 2% every year. That just means you're stealing 2% of my productivity to this world every year. So that's a crucial question. I think that needs to be focused on a lot more.
Happy days. Alan, do you want to comment on that at all?
You know, that is part of my story, the coming CBDCs. I was in an Uber talking with a guy from Eritrea, my Uber driver. He says, wow, that sounds like freedom money. I said, wow, it is freedom money. Of course, he took his tip in Bitcoin, but we have like president, or the governor of Florida. Our Florida state will not accept the CBDC. Maybe until the government says that's what you have. Will you refuse it if your paycheck is in CBDC? No, we'll take it. We'll have to take it. Retirement, you'll take it, right? But I tell people, a guy asked me, why are you so passionate, Alan, about sharing about Bitcoin? Our money's the Titanic. The ship is sinking slowly into the abyss, and I'm throwing out life rings. Learn about Bitcoin. Here's a life ring. This can save you. Learn about it. So it's just a part of the dialogue. If I am talking to people, I see Bitcoin in their eyes. No, not quite, but I don't want to share with people. I want people to come alongside, gain the freedom of a Bitcoin wallet, gain the freedom you have. I mean, and I love sharing with people about Bitcoin. It's internet money. So I have actually found friends and sent Bitcoin to friends in over 25 countries, from Venezuela to Cuba to China to Taiwan. So I tell people, I've actually have sent money to all these countries. It's so easy to use. People in Cuba, it's very hard living, and they love receiving Bitcoin. It's incredible.
It's awesome. Yeah, like I think anyone here who understands Bitcoin, like if you just feel better. You don't worry about your financial future anymore like you may have done before you understood Bitcoin. And then you want to just share that with other people. So you just do it, I think, positively. And I suppose the more we share it and the more people understand that, like, to me, it's sort of like the institutions are now gobbling it up. We see the Bitcoin made in a day and we see what they're buying. Like, so the plebs, the normal people, like everybody who's not here today, the majority of Ireland, the world, the people who need it, it's going to get harder and harder for them to own it. Is that just the free market? It's just tough. That's the way it goes, or what do you think on that? Like,
Do you want to go, Simon?
Well, yeah, I think what's like you said before, CBDCs are coming, and I think it's everyone's responsibility here to get out and educate their friends and families on the dangers that they're going to bring into society. But yeah,
I guess I would look at it kind of practically, pragmatically. You're not going to wake everybody up to this, right? And I think you could maybe look at it as your goal being not to wake up the sheep, but to rouse the lions. I mean, I would include businesses in that respect as well. If you want people to dance with you, they have to be prepared and ready to move their feet. And if you're mining an empty block, you're expending a lot of your social hash rate on trying to convince friends and family to do this, and they're just not buying it, then move on. We're all built differently, and I think that the bold and courageous and visionary people who are alert to some of the dangers that we face in society and the opportunities ahead are far more scarce than others. People who are quite happy just to switch on Netflix, eat junk food, and get up the next day and go to their 5x5 cubicle. So I would say look for the lions and not the sheep.
very good, yeah. One of the strategies I have, and I can't say it's been successful, is if I put a lot of time into influencers, people with large social media profiles. None of them are here today, although I spent a year trying to get many of them here. So, but I figure, like, if you can, bring on board someone with 250,000 followers or something and orange pill them, rather than going and try and talk to 3 people, go after the big dominoes has always been sort of my strategy in life and business. Brilliant. I think we'll open it up for some questions from the audience. So if anyone wants to ask a question, stick your hand up there and have a chat with us.
What happens when they mine the 21 million, the last coin? What do you think will happen then? Sorry, what do you think will happen when they finally mine the last coin and there's no more mining?
They'll still be mining, but the block reward essentially reduces in terms of there's no more block subsidy, there's no more bitcoins to be mined, but the network operates using 2 incentive mechanisms. One is the block subsidy, the block reward, and the other is fees. So if you send an on-chain transaction, then you pledge a fee to the miner that mines that block. That's happening now. In some cases, fees, will be, a decent percentage of the total value of the block reward. And so, yeah, I think it will carry on using fees.
But with value, your own value, do you reckon your own personal Bitcoin value will keep rising?
I don't see why it wouldn't, given that the scarcity is locked in. There's no more bitcoins. But there's going to be more demand coming online and more people adopting it. I mean, by that point, Bitcoin will be ubiquitous. It will be what we use as money, and the supply will be fixed, but it becomes it's highly divisible. So I don't think there's going to be an issue of scarcity of money in terms of there isn't enough money in circulation. We need to print more. It's just that the price of things will drop and just continue to drop over time, as it should do. We get better and better at making things. The market rewards innovation and the ability to optimize production and to greatly reduce the cost of production, and that will continue happening. So the price of things will reduce, but your savings will increase.
Okay, we've got another question here from Fergal.
Hi guys, thank you very much. I think we're all on board with the value message behind Bitcoin, and obviously you've got the 2 fiat versions of currency, the paper version and the soon-to-be digital. Is it just an argument about the worst, which is the worser of 2 evils? I mean, we all have to live in the real economy as well. So, I mean, is it that we maybe if there is an incentive to get on board with digital euros, that we just get the best possible incentive because we still have to live in the real economy? So is it about deciding which is the worser of the two evils, or
Use both. You know, some people won't have a choice because they won't figure this out early enough, and then the digital euro possibly won't purchase Bitcoin. It won't work on that. But for Bitcoiners, it's a bit like the Matrix. You can step in and step out. That's the beauty of having that optionality, as I see it.
I think ultimately Bitcoin will be integrated into the financial system. I think as much as there is a danger there of CBDCs, maybe like they'll block them from going to exchanges so you can't buy Bitcoin. I don't really see that necessarily happening. Maybe there might be restrictions initially, but ultimately there'll be a lot of products that will be brought out into the traditional banking sector where you'll have Bitcoin current accounts, you'll have debit cards that spend from Bitcoin, you'll be able to use Bitcoin in different ways. And of course you always have the freedom to earn Bitcoin by just invoicing for your time and being paid in Bitcoin and have that preference. So there's always a choice, and I think that choice will ultimately win out in the end. So, going back to Dinny's question earlier about, is it kind of too late for a lot of people to start buying and adopting Bitcoin? I think ultimately Bitcoin will win. Bitcoin will be the global monetary network of the world. We may just go through this CBDC phase, as a phase, as exactly what it is. I mean, we're 54 years into a phase right now, which is not the normal. To answer the previous question, the default is for things to debase over time, or the price of things to lower over time as we get better at building things and lowering the cost of everything. So that's the default. And what's happening in the last 50 years since we came off the gold standard is the complete opposite. Everything is going up. So your purchasing power, if you're on Bitcoin, will continue to grow. So even if you can just manage to get a small little bit of Bitcoin, even if you're stuck picking the worst of two systems for your CBDC, just even having a small bit of Bitcoin that you can either earn or save and keep growing allows you to ultimately escape that system in the end.
Okay, we've got one more question here and we can wrap it up from Kieran.
John, you sponsor my local GAA club, which is great because it's where I played hurling and where my son plays hurling now. And it's interesting because of the history of the GAA and the emergence of Irish culture and how that brought about independence. So there's a history to it as well. So I'm wondering, did you target GAA clubs? Is it just my club or...
No, it was basically, I know the guy who's the treasurer of the club, at least I think that's his position, but he's involved in the club somehow. He's a Bitcoiner, he owns restaurants in Dublin City, and he's come to some of the meetups and we've chatted. And he reached out and asked, they were putting hoardings around the club, and he reached out and I said, of course I'd love to, it's a worthwhile cause. So we have a big sign with just Zaprite and a huge big, orange Bitcoin symbol. So now everybody, when they're going by the train, by the pitch, going to work and to and from work every day, they see it. All the supporters standing around the pitch see it. So that Bitcoin logo is front and center for everybody now, and it just sparks that conversation. And so that's really what it was all about. Ultimately, Bitcoin is a grassroots movement, and it just ties in, brilliantly with the GAA and what it's all about and what community and sport is all about. And so just bringing that message to like-minded communities like that was what it was for. But yeah, ultimately it was somebody from the club that reached out.
Okay, we'll get just one last question, then we'll wrap it up to an accountant that'll be talking with Kieran. Okay, so it's from James.
Hi guys. Do you think, is there a risk as they roll out CBDCs that they'll attack Bitcoiners a little bit more? I think it was Denmark recently suggested a tax on unrealized capital gains. Do you think is there a risk of that happening in Ireland?
There's a risk for sure. I think I think we will be entering then they fight you phase. I think there will be restrictions in some sense. I don't know in how far they will actually go, but I do think there will be a lot of things that will happen where they'll try and make life a little bit more difficult. I think there's also a danger as well that not just regulatory attacks or government attacks on Bitcoiners. I think ultimately when the government starts printing so much money that society is collapsing, they'll blame it on Bitcoiners. They'll blame it on Bitcoiners who are like ruining the financial system and like, you know, we're all hoarding money and we're not spending it in the economy and all this kind of stuff. So I think the attacks will come in various different forms from a lot of different places, but ultimately I don't see them as being successful in any way. It's just something that we're going to have to deal with, and we're going to have to just be strong enough to blast through it and know that we have a mission to get where we want to be, and kind of just deflect as much as possible.
If I could just quickly come on that. I'd say don't be fearful. If there is nation-state level attacks on Bitcoin in your respect, you know, from a taxation point of view, I guess if they come knocking on your door and say we need to tax your Bitcoin, the answer would be what Bitcoin? You know, Bitcoin is highly portable. There isn't another money that's as portable. It can be sent anywhere on the planet instantly. It can be time-locked. There's all sorts of ways and engineering solutions for making, you know, I mean, Bitcoin already is incredibly robust and resilient to attacks, but if they are attacking it, that is a sign to lean into Bitcoin, not lean away from it. You can wrap yourself up in fear. You know, I consider it to be a prison that we build with our own minds. Lean into the orange glow and away from the fear, because the thing to be really fearful of is the alternative reality that emerges if Bitcoin does not succeed.
Yeah, and you don't need to worry about the tax as well. I just say to my customers, like, cross your fingers and hope the tax man is looking for $1 million off you, because you can keep the other $2 million. You know, so don't sweat good problems. And as another friend of mine says, paying tax is optional provided you can afford the advice on how to set it up. So just get rich and your problems can be solved. Thanks very much to the panel. Thanks to Alan, John, Mike and Simon. Thanks, guys.